I mentioned that when I am preparing to go into a fast and when I'm coming out of a fast, I stay away from fiber and plant foods, and I break my fast usually with protein and fat. Okay, there's a reason for that. Let me extend on it. Meat, as in animal protein, does not rot in your stomach or in your intestines or in your gut anywhere. That has been said for years and years and years, that the meat just sits there and rots. Dead animal carcass. I've heard that. I am a recovering vegetarian. I did my thesis in undergrad on vegetarian living. I am a convert now. So I studied this intensively. Plants rot in your gut, not animal products. Animal protein and animal fat is the easiest foods to digest and are what are considered the lowest residue foods. What does that mean? This will lead into some other very important topics that will be coming up regarding our gut movement system. But right now, I want you to think low residue foods mean that we use almost all of what's in that and it makes up that food entirely, right? There's nothing left over. What gets into our colon are things that don't get digested and get passed through and are left to the bacteria. The small intestine, the first part of the digestive tract before it gets to the large intestine or the colon, is where we finish breaking down and absorb our nutrients, parts and pieces of the food we eat. There's no bacteria in there, or at least there shouldn't be, and not much. When there is, it's called small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, SIBO, not a good thing. Now, when you transition to the large intestine, that's not where most nutrients or many nutrients at all whatsoever get absorbed. Water does and a few other things do, but that's not the intent of the large intestine. That is where our bacteria, microbiome of our gut, live and break down the things that get through. Most of what comes out of us is bacteria, dead bacteria, bacteria byproducts, and things we couldn't digest and the bacteria couldn't digest. Okay, that's very important to know. If anyone has ever eaten any fiber, say corn or some stringy asparagus or things, they might have noticed changes in their bowel movements and appearance, shape, and actual contents, right? They go right through us. We cannot digest fiber. Insoluble and soluble fiber they're basically indigestible. They go all the way through. Some parts, there's some nuances in there, but the bottom line is we don't. The cells of a plant are made of cellulose. They're hard and rigid, giving the plant its skeleton and structure. You need certain enzymes to break that down to get the nutrient package inside of each cell where the vitamins, minerals, and a lot of good stuff is. We, as human beings, do not produce those enzymes called cellulase. Cellulase is the enzyme to break down cellulose, which makes up the cell walls. We have cell membranes. Proteins and fats are acids. Amino acids and fatty acids. Our stomach is acidic. Most of our body is fat and protein. It is synergistic. We are not plants, and we don't have cell walls, and we don't get a whole lot that's in them. So we don't digest them. And when a lot gets into the large intestine, it can create volume. It can create increased transit time as the body tries to get rid of it because it can't digest it. It can't use it. It can pull water from your system in the fiber as it goes out. It can do a lot of things, as well as other plant foods or plant substances can get in from the small intestine to the large intestine. Remember, there's not supposed to be food in the large intestine. So things like different kinds of food starches, modified food starch, and a whole bunch of other things, partially digested starches, as well as resistant starches that people love because we don't digest them. They think they're free calories. Bad idea. What that does is allow food to get from the small intestine undigested into the large intestine, where the bacteria can proliferate even further because they're trying to break that down. When there's an overabundance of bacteria in the large intestine, it can create permeability issues, autoimmune issues, because things can get through. And what also happens is that extra level of bacteria eating that food that should have been digested in the small intestine but can't be because it's processed or it's fiber or it's cellulose gets in there. The population grows dramatically and then they die off. Bacterial lives are only about 20 minutes. So you get this huge die-off of bacteria. And so what comes out is a fuller, more voluminous movement. You follow me? And what that does in our system is that large amount of die-off of these living cells create a neurotoxin, a biotoxin within our body. And it creates an inflammatory reaction. That's also what can affect the permeability. It also what raises serotonin, cortisol, and serotonin in our body dramatically. Most problems that we think low serotonin is attributed to is really high serotonin. That could be a whole nother challenge in and of itself. The serotonin model is upside down. Bottom line is you don't want inflammation. You don't want exogenous causes of cortisol, which is from the food not naturally produced, and you don't want that overproduction of serotonin going on in your gut. So you get this biotoxic, neurotoxic that then communicates with your brain through the vagus nerve. All of it is a bad combo. You don't want bacteria from the colon getting into the small intestine any more than you want food from the small intestine getting into the colon. When that happens, now you got leaky gut, you got SIBO, you got autoimmune reactions, inflammation, and the list goes on and on and on. So bottom line is meat gets broken down entirely. Fat gets broken down entirely. Plants do not, very partially, and they produce an overpopulation of gut bacteria which die off and cause problems of their own. So when I have a clean colon that has brand new bacteria in a proper amounts due to my body without food, I don't want to introduce something like fiber or modified starches or foods that can get into the colon and feed the wrong things. Same thing with sugar, right? And I also don't want those astringent oils to get in or spices that could strip out the good ones. That's the rationale behind it. If you want something easy to digest, easy on your system, you go for natural produced animal protein and fat, okay? Because plant foods are the hardest thing to digest if we even do. I hope that cleared up some of that choice discussion I made about how I break up a fast. I'll see you in the next lesson.